Okay. Okay. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehakol niyeh b'dvarei. L'chaim, everybody. It's not vodka, unfortunately. It's only water. Only water. I shouldn't say that. Ma'im chaim, to give us life. And the true life is Torah, of course. Study of Torah gives life. And as we're coming from Purim, where we celebrate, where we say L'chaim Ad Yada, that we don't know the difference between blessed is Mordechai and cursed is Haman. We now have to take that joy of Purim and bring it for the entire year. Against your Freilach, a whole year being Freilach, full of life, full of joy. And as we've been learning about that, right? We've been learning about that in Tanya, what it means to have life. So, l'chaim, everybody. And as we have the joy of Purim extended, we bring it into the life of the Parsha that we learn every week together. L'chaim. Wow, that went down just like water. All right. So I want to say hello to everybody that's here. So Huva, and Sarah Malka, and Abigail is with us. Miriam, Tim, welcome. And Liana is here with us. Good evening. And Mr. Zellickson is here, folks. I just want everybody to note, a Holocaust survivor that I've had the privilege to meet last week and share with him. He's together with his daughters, Linda and Denise, Davida, that they're both on over here. So we welcome you, Mr. Zellickson. Thank you for being with us. And Marty is with us, Carolina, Miriam, and Alice, Larry, and Mr. or Miss iPad. Maybe you can let us know who you are. Just says iPad over here on the screen. So at least announce yourself if you don't mind, or just put it on Mr. Oh, we should call you just Mr. Okay. Hi, Mr. Remind me of a story of the Rebbe before he was the Rebbe, and a 5-year-old girl on Eastern Parkway befriended him. This is in the 40s, and he would see her. She would see the Rebbe before he was Rebbe. Previous Rebbe was the Rebbe at the time. This is in the mid 40s, and he would engage her in conversation, a 5-year-old. And after a couple of times, she then would ask, "What's your name?" "Well, you could just call me Mr." So we have Mr. with us. All right. Celia, welcome. Did I miss Andrew? And whoever can put on their cameras, that'd be amazing. Okay. Oh, Mr. Robert. Look up, even better. Okay, Robert, welcome. So, question, folks. You know, we all have a different kind of temperament, personality, character qualities, as we all know. We're all created different, with different purpose. Welcome, Irma. Welcome aboard. Some of us, when it comes, financially, we need something. We know we need it now. So what do? We take our credit card and swipe it. How I'll pay for it? We'll work it out. Others make a calculation. Can I afford it? Not afford it now. Some people don't even want to use a credit card because of that, but they're thinking forward, and some people are thinking present. Likewise, when we're learning Torah right now, for example, what does it mean to be present, fully engaged in a manner that doesn't matter what time, it will be, where I'm going after this, and, having planned it that, after the hour, I've got, no, fully engaged. There's no after. There's no tomorrow. There's just today. There's just right now. And others have their schedule exactly, lined up that, I've got another class afterwards. So there's even a thought about that sometimes, right? And likewise, a daily schedule. We're all different kinds of individuals. Some very, every part of the day is accounted for. So I can't go overboard on something. I can't be so engaged in something, so present, because there's something that comes afterwards. And again, we are one of the two, maybe we're a little of both, and so on. In other words, we have an attitude of just the present is the present, today is today, right now is right now, and that's all that matters. Or do we have an attitude, a mindset that I have to, in the present, I have to think about the future? Or we could put it in other words. Is it about the process, or is it about the result? Maybe there's other words that we could put it into. So we're going to look into the some studies today. We're going to actually do things in a little different way than we usually do. We're going to be discussing what's called alishitasoi. Alishitasoi means, the word shita means an opinion, a line, like from the word shita, it's a line, like a line of reasoning, a line of logic, a perspective. And we're going to see a debate that debates this, two sides of the coin, two different ways. And what we're going to see is interestingly, that when we learn it initially on the surface, it may not be so obvious, may not be plain in sight. And we might be thinking that it's other things. But when you look a little deeper, then we can see that emerges that this rabbi sees things in one way, another rabbi sees it in another way, even though it might be various arguments, but they're they are on line with a core reasoning, which is an interesting way to see things, which ultimately is the way to see things. You know why? Anybody? Any thoughts on that? In other words, you could see different arguments, arguing different things, different issues, right? Here's one argument discussing a debate in one area, and then you have another debate, and the reasoning or the logic is a different reasoning that has nothing to do with the other argument. Well, ultimately, God is one, and therefore the more we see a oneness in Torah learning, the deeper we're understanding the teachings. The more we see the oneness in one rabbi's opinion, the deeper we're coming to understanding that rabbinic authority's opinion, right? If we see that it's just scattered ideas, okay, you could see it that way. And sometimes on the surface, it seems that way. But when you dig deeper and you can find that, this ties in with the same principle as the other argument, then you're seeing a oneness, just as one God, right? One Torah, one Jewish people, also in the rabbinic reasoning or understanding, there's also a oneness in the way that person sees things. Is that clear, that idea? Yeah? Okay, so let's understand that. So, some background. We all know of the holiest day of the year that the Torah calls it Shabbos Shabbosim, the Sabbath of Sabbaths. It's Yom Kippur. Achaz B'Shana, one time a year, a day of atonement. And we know how important that day is. Of course, some people, that's how the day that they celebrate once a year, their Jewish connection. But the reason perhaps for that is because of the seriousness of the day, right? In any case, it's a fast day. A lesser known fast day is what we fast a week earlier, Tzom Gedalia, the fast of Gedalia. Gedalia, that's on the 3rd of Tishrei. Gedalia was the governor of Israel just after the destruction of the Second Temple. And he was murdered by, unfortunately, fellow Jews. And the sages declared that should be a fast day. Excuse me. Now, of course, that fast is not nearly as important as the Yom Kippur fast, being that it is of rabbinic origin, as opposed to Yom Kippur as a biblical fast, and actually the only biblical fast. As a result, if someone is pregnant in Tzom Gedalia, they can eat, and they can eat. They're allowed to eat. When it comes to Yom Kippur, if someone is sick, and that sickness could lead, God forbid, it doesn't have to be imminent, but it could lead, as what's called a sveka, a doubt of a doubt that it might lead, God forbid, to one's health being so so at risk that you'd be able to eat. But someone, just because they are pregnant or they're nursing, doesn't mean that they, you're not allowed to eat just for that reason. So it's definitely a much more stringent fast, right? So the question becomes like this: what happens if you're coming to? You know what? Actually, let's read it inside first. Okay. Let's read. This is from the Stei Chemed. Okay. Text number 1 in front of you. If one is certain that should he fast on Tzom Gedalia, it would cause him harm on Yom Kippur. Okay, if you're certain, right? Now let's say that the doctors say you're going to fast now on a week before on Tzom Gedalia, it's going to harm you on Yom Kippur, possibly driving him into a life and death situation and forcing him to eat on Yom Kippur. Whereas he is certain that if he would be able to fast on Tzom Gedalia with no harm done, what should he do? This question was posed by the Rabbi Mezrich in a responsum printed in the book Ohel Moshe. The parameters of the question were like this: if he does not concern himself with the consequences of fasting today, when Yom Kippur arrives, perhaps he can be considered an onus, meaning one who is forced into non-compliance, who is automatically not obliged nor culpable. Or perhaps it's better to forego the current lighter fast, so as what he would be able to fast on Yom Kippur. So it's interesting. In other words, it's Tzom Gedalia. Do I look at Tzom Gedalia? I'm here now. Now, if I fast here, that could harm me in fasting on Yom Kippur. Could very well harm me. And therefore, I have to look at the consequence, the result of my fasting now. I have to see what tomorrow it will bring. And therefore, today I don't fast. Or today I don't fast. Or do I say, no, today's Tzom Gedalia. Tzom Gedalia is a half-day fast. It's not a full-day fast. So it's not as risky, and therefore fast. What will be, will be. What will be, will be. How do we look at that? So what's your thoughts, folks? What's your opinion? Anybody like to share? Not all at once. Raise a hand. Unmute yourself. Anybody have a thought on this? Go ahead, Irma.
I would say because the fast of Yom Kippur is a more stringent and fast, that I would skip the first one.
Okay.
If it's going to hinder me from fasting this for Yom Kippur.
Okay, good argument. Who could argue against Irma? Anybody want to argue against her? Not nothing against you, Irma, but for Talmudic, we have to be true to Talmudic arguments, right, and debate. Go ahead, Andrew.
I think everything that is before us is kind of equal, and so even though Yom Kippur is, to our layman's perspective, more important, I think you have to fast because that's what we're obligated to do that day, and you have to have faith in God that you're going to be able to you do what you got to do Yom Kippur. I mean, unless there's some doctor that says absolutely a week from now you're going to die. I mean, outside of that, Yom Kippur, you just fast. If there's some side effects, there's side effects.
Excellent. Thank you, Andrew. Andrew's arguing that what's in front of you, what the call of the moment is the call of the moment, the obligation of the day. And if it's the obligation of the day, so then that's what you got to engage in. Do process what you need to process now, and whatever. Okay. Anybody else want to add something to the argument? Ahuva, please go ahead.
I'd say that it depends on each individual. So it depends on the context, whether you would land on fasting that day or taking Yom Kippur into consideration and not fasting that day.
And what would that be? What does that mean, taking into consideration individual? What do you mean by what? Give me some context to that.
Well, I'm thinking that everyone's relationship with God is unique, and so I'm not coming up with a particular scenario. So but I'm saying that it's the context that would suggest.
Okay. In other words, if somebody was more the processing person than here and now, so then they'll fast now. If someone is more about the consequence and the results of things, so therefore they're going to see the results, and the results might be harmful. So therefore that person, okay, that's the argument exactly. Very good. Thank you. Yep, exactly what the argument is. Anybody else want to share? Thank you, Ahuva. Very good.
Rabbi Fine, I wanted to share something.
Please do, Denise.
Okay. I just think also the meaning behind the fast for Yom Kippur is more about people see it as the forgiving of their own sins, and the other fasts are more about the unity of Jews as one fasting. So it's where their preference is, and if they want to do more than above and whatever risk that involves, that's what they follow, as opposed to something that doesn't directly affect them in some way that they feel passionate about, and they might not want to take that risk.
Okay, very good. Thank you. So, I mean, to be proper about this, I mean, thank you for your thoughts, and they're all good thoughts. Halacha is coming up with a principle. It's not coming up about, what personal preference might be, let's say, or where you're particular now, maybe as Uva said, based on the person, it could be about, how threatening it might be, that might be, but that's based on a principle. So, halacha is principle minded rather than, just based on what the person. Now, based not on a preference of a person, but it'll be based on the situation of the person. That's a difference, right? There we need to make a difference. Okay, but everything that you said was good and valid. Let's bring another example. Back in the day, Jews were thrown into prison very easily. If you didn't pay the month's rent to the poritz, to the landlord who administered the nobleman's property, you could be thrown into prison very easily. And of course, it was a great struggle. So there's a halachic question of a person had a halachic question of, he's in prison, tried to get released from prison, obviously, but powers that be didn't give permission. But this became the question. A certain Reuven was in jail and unable to pray with a minyan and to perform other mitzvahs. He pleaded with the minister or governor to let him free, but he was only granted 1 day pass for any day of his choice. Which day out of all days of the year should Reuven choose to go out to shul? Wow. So what an amazing question. Imagine you're in prison and this is what you're speaking to your rabbi or sending a letter to your rabbi to ask him, I'm getting 1 day out. Which one should it be? If it was before Purim, should it be I come out for Purim so I can hear the Megillah, and celebrate with family and friends? Or should I wait maybe not for Purim, but Yom HaKippurim for the day of Yom Kippur, and where I can fast with the community and be atoned for sins and so on and so forth. Or do I get out the earliest possible day, even though that day may not have so many mitzvahs related to it, right? Last Friday we had a bunch of mitzvahs. It was Purim. But to get out tomorrow, where there's nothing special, I mean, a minyan is a minyan, mitzvah is a mitzvah. What would be the appropriate thing to do? So what do you think, folks?
I thought it was as soon as possible.
Because?
You may not know what's going to happen tomorrow. Today is today. Who knows if you're going to give another chance? Something might change. Somebody might change the rules.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Alice. Anybody else?
Yeah, my answer is along the lines as Alice's. I'm thinking of a story, wasn't it? Maybe it was the previous Rebbe, or maybe it was somebody else who was asked about a release date. And I don't have all the details, but he chose, or it was chosen, the first available opportunity to be released. And you may know what I'm thinking of, and I don't have all the facts correct.
I can't think of it now, but
okay.
there is something that is, if you're jogging my forgetful memory, that is something, but I can't place it right now. Maybe it'll come to me. Okay, Vera. Okay, I want an argument on the other side. I don't want everybody on one side. Yeah, but that's not the Jewish way. Andrew, give me an argument on the other side.
All of the mitzvahs, whether one Torah portion has one more, one less, we're not allowed to weigh it. Each one has equal value. Each mitzvah, each Torah portion, each word that written has the same importance. We may not understand the difference. I mean, to a layperson, you might say Yom Kippur is more important. But we shouldn't be making that decision. So if we're supposed to be davening every day, then the next day is when you need to daven.
Andrew, thank you. That's great. But now I've got three people on the same side. I
Okay,
want some Talmudic debate over here. I want someone on the other side. Go ahead. Who's up to bat?
well, a rabbi, maybe for the other side, I would say Rosh Hashanah would be maybe the greatest place, You want to have an argument on the other side.
Yes.
Because on Rosh Hashanah, I just acknowledge that Hashem is our king, and I hear the shofar, and I don't have to fast and all this, but it's like it's the first day. It's like it's celebrating the creation. So yes, every day is a good day to go to pray. But if I have to choose one specific day, I would choose Rosh Hashanah.
And the reason being? The argument, not just the reason. Argument.
Well, I have to acknowledge that there is God, because if there is no God, why should I go minion?
So one second. You mean tomorrow I can't acknowledge that there's God? If I go to shul tomorrow, isn't that acknowledging that there is God?
No, it's not that, but I don't know how to say it. I speak English good, but to explain all this, it's really easier in French. I don't have them. I don't know how to say it, but
okay.
I would.
I'm going to ask Leanna to step in, and then I'll help you, okay, if you don't mind.
That it's a process, that it's like almost like one holiday. Like, so I'm building on what Sylvie said, that Rosh Hashanah is day one, or actually Elul is day one, the whole month, and then Rosh Hashanah, and it's building up to the final day of Yom Kippur where our fate is sealed. So it's a process. So it's more important how you start something, and it sets the tone.
Okay, excellent. Let me add to that side of the argument. Thank you, Abigail. And maybe these are the words that you were thinking. That since Rosh Hashanah is the beginning of the year, and it sets the agenda for the year, right? It sets the blessings for the year. That it is the opportunity. It is a grander opportunity on that day that, if I'm going to daven with a minyan, that my prayers are going to be heard on high, that, maybe I will have greater salvation for the forthcoming year and be released from prison altogether, right? Remember, the petition was to be released from prison. That wasn't granted. One day was granted. So maybe I need a powerful day that's not in the present, it's in the future. Maybe Rosh Hashanah might be 10 months away, so maybe that would be too far. But maybe, let's say it's not 10 months away. Or if something was closer, maybe, a day that is more an auspicious day, that my prayers together with the community would be accepted on high, that might help my situation down below. What's the point? The point is, can we see two sides, or can we only see one side? There's two sides here, right? And what's the proof there's two sides? Is that we have a debate here that is, or at least a question. So let's now bring this a little home. Where's home? Anybody? Where's home? Don't tell me where your heart is. I know. Okay, tell me, where's your heart? In the Torah portion of the week. That's where you're at home, right? The Torah portion of the week. So let's go to that and see that, in fact, this concept that we've just been discussing is actually there. Okay? So in the parasha Ki Tisa, in the very first aliyah, as a matter of fact, it speaks about the inauguration of the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, the Meshuach LeMilchama, the Kohen that is responsible for addressing the nation before they would go out to war, and also Jewish kings coming from the line of King David. And so the Parsha tells us, it tells us the following. God spoke to Moshe saying, and you shall take for yourself spices of the finest sort of pure myrrh, 500 shekel weights of fragrant cinnamon, half of it, 250 shekel weights of fragrant cane, 250 shekel weights, and a kashea, 500 shekel weights, according to the holy shekel, and 1 hin of olive oil. You shall make this into an oil of holy anointment, a perfumed compound, according to the art of the perfumer. It shall be an oil of holy anointment. Okay, so we understand that this is an anointment that is used that is used in order to inaugurate again the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, the Meshuach lemelchama, the priest that is responsible for addressing the Jewish people before they go out to war, and from the house of King David, the kings of that lineage, right? And there is this mixture, selected herbs that we have over here, together with this oil. And it needs to be boiled together with the spices. How that exactly is done is a debate. 3b. The sages of Israel are of different opinion as to the purpose of the oil. Rameir says the roots were boiled in it. Rabbi Yehuda said to him, surely the quantity of oil was not sufficient even to smear the roots with it. Rather, the roots were steeped in water so that they should not thereafter absorb the oil. And the oil was then poured upon them, and were left thus until the oil absorbed their scent. Then they skimmed the oil off the roots. So what's the debate over here? The debate is, Reb Meir says you take the herbs, they're boiled with oil without any other substance, because the verse doesn't say to use any other substance, right? Just says the herbs together with the oil. Rabbi Yehuda questions Rabbi Meir, and he says that if you did that, the oil would be absorbed into the large quantity of herbs, and what would you have? It would be absorbed, so it wouldn't be oil. It'd be more herbs than it is oil, right? And it's an anointing oil. So he says instead, what you need to do is you need to soak first. You need to soak the roots of the herbs in water, that they become waterlogged, and then you pour boiling hot water, the hot oil into that, and it makes a mixture. And then what will rise up is oil that you skim the top that is together with the herbs, and you're going to have then oil. So it seems like a solid question for Rabbi Yehuda, because what are you going to have left? You're not going to have any oil left if you're boiling the roots of these spices together with the oil. What oil is there going to be? So Reb Meir responds to that. He says, well, you'll cook it long enough and it'll turn into liquid if you cook it long enough. But Yehuda says that's not good though, because then, sometimes my kids, I'm sure some of you had your kids like this, maybe even yourself. Some people eat French fries with ketchup, right? Others have ketchup with French fries. The main ingredient is ketchup, right? With the ketchup, they have some fries, right? That's not the usual way, but some Some kids are like that. And maybe you were like that. I wasn't, but maybe you were like that, right? In other words, what's the main thing, right? So Rabbi Yehuda is arguing over here that his argument is, excuse me, if you're going to boil it to such a degree, right, you're going to have nothing really left of the oil, and then you're going to have like the fries are serving the French fry, the ketchup, rather than the ketchup is to serve, to be a condiment for the chips, for the fries. So what's going to happen is, what you're going to be left is really a spicy thing with very little oil left, because it's going to be all boiled out. But the Torah says it needs to be an aromatic oil, not an aromatic oil, rather than an oil-saturated herb. And according to Rabbi Yehuda, what's going to happen to Rabbi Meir, it's going to be an oil-saturated herb. If you put the two together and you don't have water-logged roots that you just pour the hot oil over it. Is that idea clear?
Yeah, but I find it interesting that there's a lot of places in the Torah, even in the davening, where it tells you exactly how much you have to put in, and it's very precise, and it's puzzle if you don't do it. And here there's an argument about this. I just find it interesting that there's an argument about this, and in other places it's very exact.
Very good. But the argument, Alice, let's make sure we have clarity over here. The argument isn't about the amounts. The amounts, the Torah says very clearly. The question is, how is it being processed?
Yeah, well,
that's the question.
Yeah, I'm sure
that's
there's
the question. That is our question over here. So make sure that there isn't an issue about the amounts. The amounts are the amounts, right? But there were a lot. It was a lot of spices, and it was the root of the spices, so it was a lot. And the oil would boil out, would burn out, and you would be left more with oil is supposed to be a liquid, like that's gonna that if you're gonna spill it, it's gonna flow. But what would happen, according to Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda is making the argument, is that it's going to become more of a solid, right? It's going to be more herbs that have oil in it, right? Than what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be oil that is aromatic because of the herbs. Again, the French fry ketchup issue, right?
Right.
That's what the question is over here. Now, Rabbi Meir says, well, yeah, you're right, but that's what it is. Rabbi Yehuda says, well, no, that's why you have to do this process of the waterlog, right? What's the deep, they're not just arguing about how to do something. What's the deeper reasoning behind here? It's not just the technicality over here, right? Of how of the process of making this oil, this olive oil that is used to inaugurate, again, as we mentioned earlier. What's the deeper argument over here? Anybody? Can you see it from what we spoke earlier? Anybody? Process versus results. Present versus future. Today versus tomorrow. Right? According to Reb Meir, this is the process. What the result is secondary. You need to go through the process. You need to be present in the moment. What the result of that will be, I'm just going to follow what you got to follow, and this is right. And what's the point of a mayor? Does it say anywhere water there? No. Right. So it's a novelty to bring that in. Rabbi Yehuda says, wait. But if you follow that process, then you're not going to have the result. What's the result? oil, aromatic oil. You're not going to have that. So you need to look at the results. So obviously, it means that there should be water. Okay, the ingredient of water is not a real ingredient, right? All you're doing is making the herbs, the roots of the herbs, right? It wasn't like herbs that you're buying in the store. You're getting the roots of it. You are not adding something to it in his estimation. It's just you're making them waterlogged. So that way they won't be consumed. They won't consume the oil. They won't absorb the oil. And then when you throw the hot oil in there, the oil will pick it up, whatever it picks up, and you'll take off, from the top layer where the oil rises, you'll take that off, and that will be the oil. Why? Because the Torah speaks about an aromatic oil. That's the result that you need to have. So you need to look at what the result will be. And if you're not going to have it by, as Reb Meir says, in the process of just having the roots together with the oil, well, then you need to add something to it. And it's not adding another spice, it's changing something. You're not, it's water. That water is really, in a sense, not true, even though the Torah doesn't specify it. All you're doing is making that root waterlogged. You're just making it in a way that, that it's full, so it won't absorb the oil. Let's see it in the words of the Rebbe. Text number 4 from the Sikha of this week, and look at the Sikhas in volume 16. Reb Meir's opinion is this, that when the Jews needed to make the oil, they were primarily concerned with the oil be perfect in the present. And as such, they boiled the herbs in the oil. When they weren't bothered that it would be slightly diminished future results, as the oil wouldn't later be so discernible from the herbs, right? Because it's going to be absorbed. By contrast, if you hold that no matter, we must be concerned about the future consequences. And so they couldn't boil the herbs in the oil because it would diminish the perfection later on. As such, Rabbi Yehuda states that they first soaked it in water, even though it could possibly detract from the perfection at the moment, right? Because it's not just herbs, it's waterlogged herbs, right? So it's detracting from the perfection, the process, so to speak, in the moment, but it would lend to a later perfection, because later on, what would you have? What would you have, folks? What would you have? Aromatic oil. You would have aromatic oil, as opposed to, kind of a mush. It wasn't really oil, because the herbs, the roots of the herbs, absorb the oil. Is that clear? What do we have? What's more important? Process? Just do the process, and whatever the results are, the results. Or are the results more important? And therefore, you need to look at what the consequence is going to be. And based on that, you deal in the present as a result. Good argument, huh? Pretty interesting. Do you think they argue more? What do you think? Of course. We all know about benching, Birchas Hamazon, grace after meals, right? Before grace after meals is something called zimun. Zimun, lahazmin, to invite, make that you're available now for the mitzvah of Birchas Hamazon, right? To make a zimun. You have a leader. You have to have a minimum of 3 people involved in the zimun, and you add something to the prayers, of course, right? So there's an argument to make a zimun means you're doing Birkat Hamazon, you're benching, you're doing grace after meals after you washed to have bread, right? how much bread do you need to eat in order that you can make a zimun, that you could make this preparatory part of the benching, right? So what do you think? Got two opinions.
I don't know. Was it Kezias? I don't know. Is that what it is?
It looks like you're playing sides over here, Alice. Just so Talmud says in Brachos, very good, Alice. How much must need to be considered part of a zimun, to be part of this preparatory part of the benching? You know, Rabbi Samivil and benching. Hishem Hashem Elkeinu, right? As we say. Rameir said a kezayis, the size of an olive. That's Alice. She's on the side of Rameir. And Rabbi Yehuda says a kibetza, the size of an egg. So the size of an olive is 27 grams of bread you need to have. The size of a kibetza of the egg is 56 grams, okay? So what's the argument? The difference is, same argument. Do we look at process or do we look at results? Rameir is who? He's Mr. Process or Mr. Results? Or Rabbi?
Process.
We have, Mr. Robert we have. He is process, right? And Rabbi Yehuda is results, right? So the difference is like this. The basic idea of eating, what is considered eating, that you've eaten, right, is a kazayas. Like Rameir says. What, anything less than that means you didn't eat. You didn't eat. I mean, not that you didn't eat. You didn't eat. That it's called the benchmark of eating, that you've eaten sufficient. Like everything in Torah law is defined by time and space. So when Pesach is coming, we have to eat matzah. So there's the amount of matzah and the time limit to eat the matzah. We have to eat a certain amount in a certain amount of time. Every mitzvah is done that way, right? A shofar has to be a certain size, has to be blown at the right time. So every mitzvah is that way, right? So likewise here. So the question is, what is that? So the basic threshold of what's called that you've eaten, that you've gone through the process of eating, is a kazayas, the olive size, which is 27 grams. Rabbi Yehuda argues, though, no. We have to look at the result. The result, are you indeed satiated that you could now do the Birkat HaMazon, that you can do the grace after meals or not? Well, that's not enough that you went through the process. You need the result, that from this food that you ate now, you are satiated. What is the threshold? A kibetza, the size of an egg, which is 57, as we said, 56 grams. Is that idea clear? Again, what do we have? What is this called now? Who remembers the word that we used at the beginning of the class? I expressed over here. This is an argument in, very good, Ahuva. You got the hand signals right. Anybody remember the Hebrew word? The root word is shita, which means the line of reasoning, the line of logic that you take, right? And it's all on the same line. It's even though different arguments, but it's the same leshita soy, which means his line of reasoning, line of logic, that it's down the same line, right? You guys are great. All right, now that you're Talmudic scholars, we can send you home. But what does this mean to us? How should we take this? How should we appreciate this? what do we extract from this besides that? I mean, just the learning itself, there's something important that we extracted over here, and that is that we have a deeper appreciation when we're studying something in the Torah, that there is a deeper truth that we need to get to when we are seeing an argument. That we need to know what is the core of the argument and not just the surface argument. And that's, many great sages throughout the generations have done that. Another place that we won't go into, but the Rebbe does that with Hillel and Shammai. That is the famous, House of Hillel and House of Shammai and the debates between them. The Rebbe shows that in each debate, it's really the same idea, right? It's not, various debates. So what should we take out of this? So let's, we spoke about Yom Kippur earlier. Yom Kippur is the time of tshuva, of penitence, right? And of course, that's relevant the entire year, right? That being said, though, there's something special about Yom Kippur. So there's a positive commandment. Rambam says that a sinner has to repent for their sin before God and confess. Now, do you have to wait for Yom Kippur? God forbid. You did something wrong today. You have to, you have to do tshuva today. If you did something wrong to another human being, we know you don't wait till Yom Kippur. You have to, right the wrong today. So all the more so to God Almighty. I don't know all the more so, but the same manner to God Almighty. So today we need to do that, right? But what's interesting is that Rambam writes that you need to repent before Hashem and confess. Verbal confession. Why is that important? What's the importance of verbal confession? So on a basic, simple level, is that, human nature, anybody here human? Okay. Don't all raise your hand at once. We're all human, which means we have shortcomings, failings. And one of the biggest ones is that because of our self-love doesn't allow us to truly own our wrongs, our shortcomings. And therefore we will justify our mistakes. So when we're doing tshuva, even in doing tshuva, we could still justify our mistakes on some level, right? One of the ways to help overcome that, it's not the only way, but a way to help overcome that is you verbalize the confession. You say it, right? Because by saying it, it compels you to acknowledge it much more. If you just think it, it's not the same. It's not as powerful. It doesn't have the same impact. And therefore we can't make this sincere change as we need to make. Therefore, and this is a simple understanding of it, right? Therefore we need to verbalize it. Now, that being said, there's a debate. And what do you think the debate is? What if you've got more than one thing? You got several things. Forget about waiting to Yom Kippur. Okay. Today. There's several things I got to say to God today that I got to fix, that I got to own, that I got to do tshuva and confess verbally, right? Do I have to specify all the mistakes? Or do I need to just say, God, I'm sorry for, the several things that I did. And, please, I'm sincere in my regret. Please, atone my sin, forgive my sin, right? So let's take a look over here and see what the Talmud has to tell us about the Talmud in Tractate Yuma, which is a tractate about Yom Kippur, during confession, one must detail the sin as it is stated. And Moshe returned to God and said, please, these people have sinned a great sin and have made themselves a god of gold. This is a statement of Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava. So Yehuda ben Bava, what does he say? You have to detail. Rabbi Akiva says that the verse states, fortunate is the one whose transgression is forgiven, whose sin is hidden. It teaches us that one need not detail the sins. Okay. So Rabbi Yehuda, it sounds pretty bulletproof, kind of makes sense. Just because when you have to verbalize something, so if you're verbalizing the details, then it makes sense that you should tell this sin and that sin and so on and so forth, right? Why you have to articulate everything. But what is Rabbi Akiva all about? How do we understand Rabbi Akiva? So Tosfos in the Talmud, the commentary, grandson of Rashi, so he says one should specify their sins so as to be truly ashamed by them. Some oppose and say not to specify so others should suspect the sinner of the other sins, and thus the sinner lose credibility of in other legal context. Okay, so the idea of Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava, it's a different Rabbi Yehuda than the previous Rabbi Yehuda, by the way, that we get. The opposing opinion is that maybe we would be suspect of other sins that maybe we're not responsible for. So that is an external surface explanation. The Rebbe gives us a deeper explanation, and he says the following, text number 13. The opinion that calls for the person to specify their sin considers the added intensity that it will lend to tshuva and is not concerned with the future consequences. Now, you need to do tshuva. All details are important. You need to specify. What the consequence of that will be is irrelevant. Process is most important, and that's the process necessary. By contrast, Rabbi Akiva is the opinion that we must take future into consideration. In every situation where you would immediately see the future consequence. Thus, even though specifying the sin now would intensify the tshuva, we must consider future negative consequences, the Rebbe says. So, future consequences. What does that mean? So let's explain it maybe in the following way. Why do you do tshuva? Why do we repent? Anybody? How come?
Because we feel disconnected from God.
Excellent. Excellent. Because we feel disconnected from God. Excellent. Any other reason?
For the feelings of others, for our fellow man.
Okay. Excellent. What other reason? Let's be more practical than so holy. Sometimes we do tshuva very simply, out of fear of punishment, right? Or guilt. We feel guilty. And we don't like the feeling of guilt, so, we do tshuva. So if you're doing it out of guilt or out of fear, then of course that will compel you to specify, so you can kind of get the guilt off and the fear of the retribution. So you might specify. But if it's, Leanna, what you said was about being disconnected. If it's about a sense of disconnect, then in a sense that the details are irrelevant. And this is the deeper meaning of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva is coming to say, tshuva is about returning to God, being that you were disconnected and you desire to be reconnected. And it's not about the fear, it's not about the guilt, it's not about any other reality, but I just want to reconnect. And therefore, details are not really important. All the important thing, because the detail sometimes is more about you than about who you are connecting to. Think about it in human terms. The fact that that you need to recount and so on is sort of like to get it off you, sort of like get it off your chest, and so on. But where it's about the feeling of disconnect and the desire to reconnect, which really what tshuva ultimately in a deeper sense is then the detail is not really important. It's, I just want to be connected to you, and I'm terribly sorry for the disconnect.
I have a question.
Yes.
Well, on Yom Kippur, don't we go through the whole series of things for the sin of indifference, for the sin of this? Why, if what you just said is true, why would we have to go through each of those particular sins on Yom Kippur?
Excellent question. Excellent question. So, first of all, whose opinion was this? It's Rabbi Akiva's opinion. Is there a different opinion? Yeah, Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava, right? So it's not the only opinion. And in a certain way, think about it for a moment. Rabbi Akiva's opinion is a very high-minded opinion. Are we all there? Not necessarily. Are we all, when we do something wrong, not at all guilt-ridden, having a sense of fear, trepidation, because we did something wrong, of the fallout that there might be? So Rabbi Akiva's opinion comes out is actually a very lofty ideal. And therefore you could ask a question, okay, that might be good for the few, or those that are holding by that level, that all that's important to them is not to be disconnected from God and to be connected. And by the way, think about in human relations. How many times we do something wrong to somebody, and it's the guilt that brings us back. It's the fear of consequence that brings us back, right? But that's a much lower level. So then we might, recount the things, sort of, to kind of, I don't know, repay, so to speak, to to make good that I shouldn't have the guilt. But that's about me. It's not about as much as who I'm reconnecting to. When someone did something wrong to you, and if you really are connected to that person, just by the fact that that person is just sincerely coming back towards you, it shouldn't matter to you the details. It shouldn't matter to you, like, that they recount to you, I'm sorry I did that, I'm sorry I did that. It actually should pain you that if you're going to hear that from the person, because you love that person, you care for that person. It's not like you don't want them to be in that pain, So you kind of, hopefully you got over it before that. If we're good people, you forgave them already, even if they didn't ask for forgiveness, right? You let go of it already. So then when they come, it's just that they're reconnecting. That's all that matters. That's what they desire. So you don't need the details. Details are irrelevant, right? Now, for the person to work it through themselves, maybe in themselves, the details might be important in order that to fix that you shouldn't do it again. But in the essential idea of tshuva is to return. So, but that's a very high ideal. So, Rabbi Akiva believes that that ideal is something that is latent in every single one of us, even though we might not be there in actuality. It's under the surface. We can find it. It's not distant. Truth is never distant. It's only distant in our minds and our hearts because we don't feel, we feel maybe removed. But when we become aware of the truth, it's not distant. It's there, right? Famous story of Rabbi Akiva when he was with other group of scholars on Temple Mount or near Temple Mount, right? He lived right after the destruction, right after the destruction of the Second Holy Temple in the year 69. He lived, decades later, but the destruction was still there. And when they saw a fox coming out of the Holy of Holies, right? The other sages, they cried and he laughed. So Rabbi Akiva, why are you laughing? You just saw a fox, which is bringing the prophecy to fruition that says that there will be out of the Holy of Holies, a fox will come from the rebels. So he said, that's exactly why I'm laughing, is because just as that prophecy came true, so will the prophecy of Zechariah come true, that we will come to a time that we'll be in Jerusalem and that we'll be able to sit there in peace and in harmony in the times of Mashiach. So I believe that Mashiach is imminent in his coming. So what does he see? On the surface of destruction, you see only destruction. Dig a little deeper, you see redemption. Same thing on your destruction of something in your life that you need to do tshuva. Beneath that is redemption. What's redemption? Not the terrible things that you did, right? The terrible thing was one thing, disconnect, right? It's not a bunch of things, it's one thing. So when we understand it, it's one thing, so then that will propel us to do tshuva. In what manner? In a manner that all I want to do is to connect. That's what I want. So therefore, we really all have the capability. Some of us, it's revealed, right? And some, we're still crying. We're still crying and not finding the redemptive capability within our very own soul, let alone within the and all the more so within the or all the more so, but in the world likewise, right? This is so. Let's see how the Rebbe explains this now in the terms of our discussion over here. Text number 15, Rabbi Akiva, who always takes the future into consideration, right, looks at the inner reality of what will come about in the future. In the context of tshuva, Rabbi Akiva sees the inner truth of tshuva. And so, even if a person experiences a lower level of tshuva, its potential and inner truth is a much deeper type of tshuva. And as such, he holds that a person needs not specify their sin. Right? So this is getting back to the debate. Right? According to Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava, you have to specify. Right? Why? Because you have to go through the process right now. And the process right now, you need to, bring you to a place of where you have ownership and you are going to have every sin accounted for. Rabbi Akiva says, no, future. What does it mean, future? So we had a technical reason why he said the future. The Gemara, the Talmud says, right? A deeper reason is because the future means, in these terms, potential, right? Today I am what I am. Tomorrow I could be the potential that I will reach. So that here we're now giving a different concept to what it means, the result, the result over here as opposed to the process, right? The result, the future means potential. So here's a deeper meaning now in this. And this is a different debate. I mean, taking the debate to another level, shall we say, that the potential we have is what we need to consider right now. So therefore, when it comes to doing tshuva, even though maybe I am driven and compelled by fear, or I'm compelled by guilt, but I have to recognize that there's something more than what is in the present. I have the future potential that is here now. And therefore, what is tshuva all about? One thing, reconnecting. And that strong desire to reconnect, period. Because I am, at this moment, disconnected. And therefore, that's what compels me. So when I know that the potential, so to speak, future is there right now, it's present right now. So therefore, I don't need to specify the sin. Even though maybe, naturally I don't live by that. I'm not naturally on that level. But if I know that it's my potential, it's my future, it's my, right? But it's my future, it's my potential now. So even though it might be only something in a sense realized in the future, but it's a potential right this moment. So therefore I have to utilize that, and I can utilize it. And therefore he says it's not necessary. Yom Kippur, we do specify. I have to, Andrew, great question. And I had that thought come through my mind, but I didn't have the opportunity to look this up and to try to figure this out. Why, and I don't know, does that mean we don't go according to Yehuda ben Bav? We go according to Yehuda ben Bav, and we don't go according to Rabbi Akiva in the Psak Halacha. Because in the end, in the final analysis of things, Yom Kippur needs to speak to every one of us individually where we're at, and most people are at where they're at, right? Even though the potential is the potential, but Yom Kippur, the liturgy of Yom Kippur needs to speak to people where they're at, and therefore it goes according to Rabbi Yehuda. That's my thought in the moment, but it's a great question. That Tzorach Ian need more development in looking into that. A powerful idea that we conclude the class with is that, in a sense, according to Rabbi Akiva, we can have the result, which means future, which in this future means the potential that I have, right? That will be in the future realized, but the question is, that potential is present now. So what I can do then is process in the present, right? Something that is, in a sense, it's the future, but since it's my potential now, in a sense, it's a reality now. I just have to expose it. So it kind of brings like the two ideas somewhat, meshing them together. And of course, then what that means for us is a very beautiful, profound idea on how we recognize the potential that we have in our lives of accomplishing and doing and being is present. It's not just something merely of a potential of the future, right? If it's something that I can be in the future, that means I can be it today. Just that notion is extremely empowering and a beautiful idea. Any questions, any comments, any thoughts?
Are temple sacrifices either part of the process, or how would you say, when people brought sacrifices for their sins? How is that seen? Is it a process to tshuva?
Of course, it's a part of tshuva. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So you didn't have to say your sins, you just brought the animal.
Well, you brought it for a specific thing, and then there was a vidui that came with the korban chatas. Yes, there was the confession. Yeah. If there was like if you were transgressed something inadvertently, and we'll get into that kind of stuff later when we get into speaking all about that. But yes, absolutely. Any other questions or comments? I heard someone unmute, but they're staying mute.
That is there a concept of Tanya in here with thought, action, speech, and that the thought is more within you than the other parts? Does that have to do with tshuva? Does that have anything to do with that?
With thought, speech, and I mean, this is all expressed in thought, speech, and action, right? Tshuva is, of course, the thought that you have that now is being verbalized with confession. That's verbalizing, and that is then, so to speak, the action of returning, the act of returning and to reconnecting with Hashem. Yeah, very sure, absolutely. All right, folks. Can whoever can put on their camera and say Gut Tavach, that would be amazing. Everybody, can you put on your camera?
Gut Tavach and
Linda, I forgot your father's Jewish name.
Yeshayahu.
What? I'm sorry. What was that?
Yeshayahu.
Yeshayahu. Yeshayahu. Oh, beautiful. Rabbi Shaya. Is that how he's called? Rabbi Shaya? Is that how he's called?
Thank you.
Sollte sein gesund und stark. Thank you for being with us. I hope you gained something from our engagement. All right, folks. Huh?
Yes, he did. 2 thumbs up.
All right. Thank you, Linda. Thank you, everybody. Everybody, if you can say a Gut Tavach so I can get this on video. Everybody, please. Shavua Tov, Gut Tavach.
Gut Tavach.
A gute Nacht.
Oh, beautiful. All right, folks. Beautiful. Thank you.
Tov.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.
God bless you all.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Good night, everyone.
Don't forget, tomorrow, my yeshiva from 12 noon to 1:30. Join us. Be well.